And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Well, good morning, my friend. Welcome to another fantastic installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and vacuous forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly and permanently ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone, and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studios in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday, the 80th anniversary of the Normandy invasion. You know, as a historian, I think it's important to look back on, certain turning points in history. And before the Normandy invasion, nobody really ever thought that the United States could defeat the most powerful military at that time. And let's make no mistake, it was Germany at that time. Nobody thought that the U.S. could take on the Axis powers. Our military readiness months before the invasion was really negligible. There was no way that we could have equipped. Nobody thought there was any way that we could equip up and be ready to launch that invasion when we did. And the truth is, we weren't even really that ready. A lot of our troops weren't trained. Certainly, they weren't trained to the level that they are today. A lot of it was just young kids, 17, 18, 20-year-old kids that were handed a rifle and said, all right, when the gate opens, run that way. And they did. And thankfully, we did that. And we were successful during World War II. We literally saved the world. Winston Churchill famously said that Americans will do the right thing after they have exhausted all other possibilities. And that may have been the case right there. The United States really had delayed getting into World War II for quite some time before we entered the war. So we did. Today is the 80th anniversary of that event. Before the program, actually really early this morning, I was watching the commemoration at the National Cemetery in France. It was really interesting. There was over 100 World War II veterans there. Think about that, 100 guys assembled, many of whom are 100 years old. Like 102 was the age of one guy. He walked up there himself. Pretty impressive. And the President of the United States was able to pull off his speech without one of these.
True international pressure.
And he pretty much avoided politics, which is also unusual for him. So we chalk one up for the rare occurrences where he can actually be a normal president. Well, today is kind of a big day on the program, too. For the first time, Cowboy State Politics is being live streamed to Facebook. Hopefully, everything goes according to plan. It's been working okay on YouTube, so I see no reason why the Ditto Cam would not function on Facebook. But we're giving it a try this morning. Hopefully, everything is going well. And if it does, we're just going to continue doing that. So if this is your first time watching the Ditto Cam on Cowboy State Politics Live, welcome to the studio. At some point, I'll put together a video where I can show you the rest of it. The baseball card collection, the baseballs I have in the studio, my really cool old radio. There's a lot of cool stuff in the studio. I think it's important to have, an environment that, fosters creativity. So I've got a lot of books around the studio. So anyway, when I get some time, I'll put that together for you. So on the program today, as you can see from the chalkboard, if you're watching on the Ditto Cam, shock report. Absolutely groundbreaking, earth-shattering report. Hunter Biden is a crackhead. From The Blaze, in an article entitled Hunter Biden Trial. Exes testify to his drug habits. An FBI agent, former gun shop employee, weigh in as well. It's no secret to any of us that Hunter Biden is absolutely a crack addict. Well, and other drugs. But crack seems to be the one that he favors. And he was addicted to crack when he bought that gun, which is what he's on trial for right now. One of the questions you answer when you go fill out the FFL form at the gun shop is, are you addicted or are you an unlawful user of any other substances? I don't remember the exact wording, but basically, are you addicted to drugs? And Hunter Biden answered in the negative, nope, I'm not addicted to drugs, not on crack, not a crack addict. Well, that's lying on a federal form, and if you or I had done that, we'd already be in the slammer. No question about it. So, to the article, and I quote, first son, Hunter Biden, a man who detailed his struggles with drug addiction in his 2021 memoir, Beautiful Things, is currently standing trial in Delaware for 3 charges related to allegedly lying on a federal form and illegally possessing a weapon for a brief period in late 2018. Day 3 of that trial has now concluded after testimony from 2 of Biden's exes, as well as an FBI agent and a former gun shop employee who sold Biden the firearm. So, Biden is, without a doubt, an unlawful user of narcotics. And a lot of his exes testified to that effect. Now, normally, I wouldn't get into all the tawdry details of this trial because a lot of them are really illicit. And, honestly, I don't really think that they matter that much, except in so much as it disproves Hunter Biden's claim that he wasn't addicted to crack and using drugs at the time he bought that firearm. So anyway, his exes were up on the stand, and one of them, let's see here, her last name is Buell, but she claimed that Biden attempted to conceal his addictions from friends and family, but he became angry and short-tempered whenever he was under the influence. Prosecutors have thus far attempted to demonstrate that Biden was abusing street drugs, particularly crack, at the time the weapon was purchased. Biden's attorneys, by contrast, have attempted to argue that President Biden's just hopped up on every other drug they can find to keep him on track so he can complete actual sentences. Biden's attorneys have attempted to argue that Biden was abusing alcohol at the time, not illegal substances like crack. They've also suggested that Biden didn't see himself as an addict at the time he purchased the gun and therefore didn't lie. Well, of course, we're living in a time where you can identify as anything that you want. If you're a crack addict, you could identify as a pothead. I mean, really, what's the difference? Buell and so 2 of Biden's former romantic partners testified for the prosecution on Wednesday. Ex-wife Kathleen Buell, there we go, and ex-girlfriend Zoe Keston. Buell had been subpoenaed to testify, while Keston agreed to testify after receiving an immunity deal. Buell and Biden were married for nearly 25 years, from 1993 till 2017. They have 3 daughters together, and she testified to a whole bunch of drug use in the Biden household. Let's see here. She testified that she repeatedly discovered drugs or drug paraphernalia in Biden's car, and that she had to remove those items on several occasions to keep his children from knowing. Buell claimed that Biden attempted to conceal his addiction from friends and family. She also claimed that though Biden had moved out of their home shortly after she discovered the crack pipe. God, this is so crazy. I mean, really, who leaves a crack pipe laying around their house when they've got children running around? I mean, who even has a crack pipe? Hunter Biden, apparently. And that brings up another question. Is the definition of normal different for you than it is for Biden? I mean, normally we wouldn't even know what a crack pipe was if we saw one, except, of course, in the picture, we've seen the pictures of Hunter Biden using one from his laptop. But I mean, really, is this normal behavior for an adult who has children? Yeah, I don't think so. Anyway, Keston, on the other hand, met Biden while she worked at a strip club in late 2017, and she testified that she frequently saw Biden use crack. Early in their relationship, though, Biden didn't use quite as often, she said, because they were so focused on each other. Yeah, well, I don't think that Hunter Biden was focused on anybody other than himself, much less her, whom he met at a strip club. By the time the two were sharing a rental home in Malibu, Keston had had enough and decided to move back to New York. She claimed that she saw her testimony indicated that in the weeks leading up to the gun purchase, Biden was still actively engaging in drug use. So all of these details are necessary to prove that the guy is absolutely addicted to crack or drugs. I mean, I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be crack. I mean, it wasn't until President Biden was in the White House that anybody ever thought that you would find cocaine in the White House. Now, I'm sure different presidents have had all sorts of different drugs, guests to the White House, but nobody thought that the Secret Service would discover cocaine in the White House. But the rules are different. Normalcy is different where the Bidens are concerned, and apparently, routinely using drugs is completely normal for Hunter Biden. So, shock report from the news: Hunter Biden's a crack addict. Now, because he ought to absolutely be convicted of lying on that form. There's no question about it. His lawyers can argue that he's a drunk all day long. But there's a lot of evidence, including his own words in his memoir, that says, yep, Hunter Biden is an absolute crack addict. Now, remember, I've told you lots recently that we don't have a justice system anymore. Really, what we have is a two-tiered legal system. Just the word justice implies that things are fair, and you and I know that they're not. If a conservative wouldn't have a whole bunch of illicit drugs around, but anyway, if they did, and were caught, you'd be thrown in the slammer faster than anything, and you'd be spending a long time in jail. But because Hunter Biden is a Democrat and his dad is the president, apparently the rules are different for him. So in any case, lots of stuff going on in court. Apparently, hopefully, the jury is going to listen to all of that testimony and determine that, yep, he lied on that form and he needs to be punished accordingly for it. And, that's probably going to it ought to have a big impact on the election. It ought to prove conclusively that Joe Biden has been lying all along. I mean, we all know that, and we all have proof of it, and we're willing to look at the proof. But we just need to keep adding to the stack of things that Joe Biden has done wrong. And one of those has been routinely lying about his son. So anyway, let's talk about some other criminals. There were 7 GOP senators that continue to back White House lawfare even after the Trump conviction. Now, of course, we have all sorts of people in elected office, both the House and the Senate. Don't include Harriet Hageman in this because she doesn't even fit anywhere near this category. But they're totally in favor of conservatives when conservatives are in power. People like Lindsey Graham, they're all about the Trump agenda when Trump's in power. But when he was not in power, Lindsey Graham just simply jumped to the other side. I mean, that's what that guy does. He's a political chameleon. Whomever's in power, he goes along with them just so he can, keep the boat going in the same direction towards debt and bankruptcy. But now they're confirming Biden's pick for judges. This is from The Blaze, and I quote, 7 Republican senators voted Tuesday to confirm the latest Democratic judge to a 15-year term on the D.C. Superior Court. Now, that might not be surprising on a normal day, but this judicial nomination was the first chance Republicans had to show even a limp semblance of resistance to Democratic lawfare after the country was plunged into a constitutional crisis by Donald Trump's kangaroo court conviction. Now, let's talk about that last part just for a little bit. It absolutely, it's not a law, but it's absolutely been the tradition, the history of America that we don't prosecute political opponents. We don't bring former presidents up on charges and take them to court. Even in the Nixon case, one of the very first things that Gerald Ford did, much to his detriment, by the way, was pardon Richard Nixon. But that was absolutely the right thing to do, to get the country to move past the whole Watergate scandal. Let's move on. We've got him out of office. Let's get the country moving in the right direction. Nobody, filed charges at the state level to go after Richard Nixon, which the truth is, Richard Nixon's crime was the cover-up. He wasn't the guy that broke into the Watergate building, but he absolutely could have been brought up on charges. And honestly, my friends, one of the first things I remember from social studies or civics class or whatever you want to call it, I think it was called social studies when I was in school. One of the most prominent memories I have is learning that we do not prosecute former presidents. I don't know why that one sticks out in my head, but it does. And it's one of the things that used to separate us from all the banana republics. You've got a lot of countries, a lot of them in South America, where, man, if you're the political opponent of the person that's in power, you're going to jail. And I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or doubts about it. Think about Russia. I mean, the Russians do this sort of thing. They jail political opponents. So now we've brought President Trump up on charges. He's been convicted. And so why should we assume that we are any different than Russia or any of those banana republics? Because now we've erased one of those big differences that separated us from that group. Some of the 7 Republicans who lent a hand to the Biden administration are the usual suspects, such as Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Mitt Romney of Utah, another, Lindsey Graham. He plays a conservative on TV, but is a reliable vote for President Joe Biden's judicial agenda. The final 3, Tom Tillis, James Langford, and Mike Rounds, have no excuse either. Republicans continue to support their own prosecution. It would be shocking were it not so believable. The Republicans in Congress have a long track record of going along with the Biden administration absolutely to their own detriment. It's absolutely amazing, my friends. Those folks in Congress know better than anybody what the Biden administration has been doing to them, and they continue to go along with their agenda. It's absolutely crazy, my friends. Now, here's the insane part. Amid the former president's prosecution, these 7 Republicans gave a stamp of approval to the Democrats' judicial agenda because they wanted to. Democrats didn't need the votes to confirm that judge. They already had the votes. Lindsey Graham and friends chose to jump in and add more fuel to the fire. They absolutely didn't need to vote for that. And politically speaking, they shouldn't have. I mean, if they're just political animals, which Lindsey Graham absolutely is, there's no way he should have voted for this person, but he chose to. Now, that tells you exactly who a lot of these establishment Republicans are in the United States Congress. They're the people that lick their finger, hold it up in the wind, and find out which way it's blowing on that day. And I mean, it's these very people that we've got to get rid of. We've got to get them out of Congress. And, our senators, I'm not a particularly big fan of John Barrasso, nor am I a fan of Cynthia Lummis, even though she has come on the program, only because it served her purposes, because I happen to agree with her one time. But Harriet Hageman, rock star, man. But the other jokers in Congress, we've got to get them out of there. And, the only way that we can really help in Wyoming is to advocate on those Congress people's behalf. Write letters. If you've got the money, you can donate to their campaign. If there's somebody that you like, particularly, there's no reason why you can't donate to their campaign. But this is going to take an all-out effort to right the ship, my friends. And that's the only way that we're going to do it. We'll have more after the break. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a selection of better news, entertainment, and commentary than right here on the Independence Network, with great voices like Joey Carenti from Just Blame Joey, Ken Pendergraft from The Ramble Room, Tom Kelly from Wide Right Turn, and the lovely Christine from The Hair Affair. And of course, my program, Cowboy State Politics, Wyoming's most listened to political program. Also, don't forget to check out the articles section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program.
I remember I was 8 years old with a blank tape waiting by the radio. Come on, man, play Back in Black. I want to play it back on repeat. I remember Panama City, long nights with a girl named Christy. She took me down to the Paradise City, then up on Cripple Creek. Still something about a guitar cranked up, head banging to the beat of the bass drum. Still something about a sold out show in the second row with your girl on your shoulder. Still something about raising a cold beer when the lights go down and the crowd cheers from Delta Soul to Abbey Road. Sweet child to sweet home. Still something about rock and roll, rock and roll. Still something about rock and roll, rock and roll, rock and roll. I saw a Journey in the big Coliseum. No dancing, no lip syncing. I tell you this, don't fight the feeling.
Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson on Cowboy State Politics Live, Wyoming's most listened to political program. Documented to be almost always right, just about 99% of the time. I haven't gone back and reworked the numbers for a while, but we got to be getting close to being 99% right. It's a record that you can only do and it's really easy. All you got to do is speak the truth, which is something that the mainstream Wyoming press would never do. And if you need any evidence of that, just go look at the cow pie, pull up any of Leo Trotsky Wolfson's articles, and see if he's been critical of a single redcoat. You won't find one because this is something that I pay pretty close attention to, which is why you should watch and now listen and now watch anyway to Cowboy State Politics, because I bring you the facts and the data, and I show you what's happening in their own words. Now, it's been a while since I've been able to play you a little bit of baseball zen. I've been trying to make an effort of doing that each and every day, just to kind of lighten the program. A lot of the stuff we talk about on Cowboy State Politics is, well, it's pretty heavy. And, it's not all that happy. So even I like to take a little break every now and again. And, of course, I'm a big Texas Rangers fan and baseball nut. So here's your 90 seconds or so of a little baseball zen.
Rangers showed that they might be a little more aggressive tonight on the bases when Smith stole a base last inning. And Travis takes off. The pitch is high. The throw to second is not in time. And the Rangers are 2 for 2 in stolen bases tonight. That's the 4th of the year for Jankowski.
The Janko gets a good jump here, but take a look at the footwork of Jake Rogers. He's turned into that throwing position already. This is a great pitch to throw on. It's elevated. It's a fastball right to his right shoulder, but he still can't get Jankowski at second base.
1-0 to Seager, and he hits it past third. That's a base hit. Jankowski will score from second. Simeon hustles over to third base. RBI single by Corey Seager, and the Rangers get that first run tonight.
Yeah, it was a fun game to watch last night. My Texas Rangers just kept piling it on. Now, the truth is, they're not playing that great a ball this year. They're a couple of games below 500, which is not a good record if you're thinking about going to the playoffs. But you can't be a fan only when they win. So you take the wins with the losses. Lord knows I've learned that in my long career watching the Denver Broncos. I mean, if you want to learn how to be a true fan, just grow up watching the Denver Broncos. They'd win, then they'd lose. They'd win, and then they'd lose. They'd win, and then they'd get hammered. So anyway, I don't watch football, by the way, anymore. I think the last football game I watched was it may have been the Super Bowl. Yeah, it was. The lovely Christine wanted to watch the Super Bowl, so we watched that. But other than that, I don't watch football anymore. I'm much more interested in baseball, and I'll tell you why I became a Texas Rangers fan. I hadn't really paid attention to baseball for several years, which that's something when I was growing up, man, I was a baseball junkie. I think every young boy thinks they're going to be a professional baseball player at some point. I was no different, though I was not very good at baseball. Only hit one home run, stole one base, and I played catcher most of the time. Well, anyway, I'm getting off target here. So the lovely Christine and I were in Dallas. She was going to a hair show, and I had appearance on the Blaze Network. So we kind of did double duty. And I just happened to suggest, hey, let's go watch a baseball game if the Rangers are in town. So we went to the game, and we walked in, and there was zero politics. None. It was in the middle of June, too. And there were no politics, my friends. Not a bit. And we even walked up to the beer stand to get a fake beer. And I asked them what kind they had, and the lady says, well, we've got Bud Zero. And I must have grimaced or something. And she says, hey, you're at Texas Rangers Stadium. There's no politics here. Do you want a beer or not? And I'm like, oh, point taken. I'll take the Bud Zero. Let's go watch some baseball. They were playing the Angels, and the Angels had the stupid pride flags on their uniforms. And by the way, the Texas Rangers for a second year in a row, and actually it's more than that, but this is the second year that people have actually noticed, are the only team in baseball that is not having a pride event. Yet another reason to support the Texas Rangers. So that brings me to the next topic. The Department of Education, a completely unconstitutional branch of government. Interestingly enough, it was not Jimmy Carter who first thought of the Department of Education. It was Andrew Johnson, if you can believe that. Yeah, the drunk, the guy that was impeached. He was not removed from office, by the way. But yeah, total drunk, came up with the idea of the Department of Education, but it wasn't until Jimmy Carter that it was actually put into place. Well, now the Department of Education is hailing Pride Month. I guess nobody saw this coming. From the Blaze, and I quote, the United States Department of Education marked Pride Month in a post on X, and some people who responded and advocated for the abolition of the department. Quote, every student should feel safe attending school in America, free from discrimination and valued for who they are. That means creating welcoming and safe learning environments for every LGBTQWXD student and ensuring educators have resources to support the LGBTQWXD plus minus divide and multiply young people. It needs to be abolished, said Corey DeAngelis in a tweet in response to the department's post. Free advertising for school choice, he also wrote. Joel Berry of the Babylon Bee wrote, and I quote, the Department of Education has been a disaster for children since the year it was founded. It needs to be abolished. Quote, what we really mean is every student should feel safe, except for girls. And that perhaps is the biggest point, my friends, that we're focusing on all these people that are wanting to be girls and disregarding girls themselves. In every state in the union, Title IX was a gigantic fight, and it was in Wyoming too. And now we have, not the exact same sports for girls and boys, but we have an equal number. And that's something that we should absolutely protect. And to claim that girls can compete against men is absolutely ridiculous, even though I've seen people in Wyoming try to claim that. It's absolutely preposterous. If you want to be a transgender person, first of all, I think you should have to wait until you're 18. But if that's how you identify, then you need to play in the sport that is your gender, the people you are physically matched to compete against, not some girl who has half your strength. which is what a lot of schools in the United States are doing. In Wyoming, we have, I can't remember the name of the act, but there was a bill that was akin to the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. It essentially bans men from competing in women's sports, which is absolutely a good thing. So a lot of calls for the Department of Education to be abolished, and rightfully so. And, you know, the only thing we can do is just keep piling on and get more people convinced that the Department of Education is just a load of crap. They're indoctrinating your kids. And, you know, your kids are going to go into school one way and come out a completely different person simply because they've been indoctrinated by activists in the school system. And don't think that Wyoming is immune to this. I want you to look up something. Go to Google and type in WEA, Safe and Just Schools Cadre. If you do that, you're going to find a website that is called the Wyoming Education Association Safe and Just Schools Cadre. And if you read through that page, at the bottom paragraph, it was the bottom paragraph, it literally says that the WEA is training teachers to become activists. So who are they going to be, you know, inflicting with their activism? Well, it's going to be your children, my friends. Go check that out. Go read that entire page, and you'll find out what the Wyoming Education Association is all about. And it doesn't have anything to do with education. When we come back from the break, there's a story I've been wanting to get to all week, and it just keeps getting further and further down in the stack of stuff. And it's about all of these electric car charging stations. There was a review by Aaron Turpin in the Cowboy, and he doesn't have very nice things to say about these charging stations, which is why the state of Wyoming has decided not to build them. Even though former director of the Wyoming Department of Transportation, Luke Reiner, said that we were going to focus on it, his predecessor has said, or the guy who came after him has said, we're not going to do that. So we'll get to that after the break.
2 + 2 is 4.
Whoop, hit the wrong button there. That happens on live radio every once in a while. Let's try that again. Here we go.
I got real nervous. She took her coat off. She was so pretty. Oh, yeah. I'm always talking, maybe talking too much. I love that little girl and I just can't get enough. You take so lonely and not with nowhere to go. Just go down and it's a hell of a show. Shake it, snapping her fingers. She'll be moving round and round. Oh, she's shaking, shaking.
It's spring in the Cowboy State, or as Albert Sommers likes to say, spring-ish. Time to get the motorcycle out of the garage, time to go up the mountain, time to get outside and tromp around. And when you're doing that, you still want to make sure that you take care of your feet. The best way that you can do that is order a pair of Kenai boot socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. I know, your mama always told you that wool socks are only to be worn during the winter. But times have changed, my friends. The Kenai boot socks from the Buffalo Wool Company will not only keep your feet nice and toasty warm, they'll keep them cool and dry in the summer. Trust me, these are the most incredible socks that you're ever going to put on your feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. You're definitely not going to be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bechstel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way.
Watch out. Cowboy State Politics and the Independence Network are only going to get stronger, bringing you the facts and data that nobody else does, a selection of interviews that nobody will do, and you'll get it all only on Cowboy State Politics, the Independence Network. Just blame Joey. The Ramble Room with Ken Pendergraft. We're the ones that are doing the work that the mainstream media just simply won't do, because they're more interested in feeding you a line of bull crap about all of these candidates than they are telling you the truth and educating you. So you just stick with the Independence Network and you'll learn way more about all these candidates than you would if you just pay attention to the crappy cow pie or the Pravda on the Platte or the Wyoming turkey vulture. And the truth is, my friends, those people intentionally mislead you. And it's provable. I can show you article after article after article. It's these horrible right-wingers and the moderate Wyoming caucus. The truth is, there's nothing moderate about the Wyoming caucus. They vote with the Democrats an average of 85% of the time. And I can show you the data. It's one thing to just say something like they do. It's another thing entirely to be able to prove it. And we here at the Independence Network and at Cowboy State Politics prove it each and every day. One thing I probably need to explain, the ish joke in the ad where I said, it's spring-ish. Well, that comes from something that Albert Somers said on the floor of the House. He was counting up a vote and he said, well, I think we've got 32-ish. So the measure passes. He didn't even bother to count. So it's kind of a joke here at cowboystatepolitics.com. Well, it's spring-ish. We don't really want to count. We don't want to pay any attention to it. It's just, it might be, it might not. So before the break, I was telling you there's this article about electric charging stations that I've been meaning to get to for a couple of days, and it just keeps getting pushed to the side. We've got other stuff to deal with. So I thought today I'd just dig it out of the stack of stuff and we'd go at it. This one is by Aaron Turpin in the Cowpie, and it's entitled Electrify America Chargers in Cheyenne, a Case Study. And I quote, over a few weeks' time, I visited the new Electrify America fast chargers at the Target parking lot in Cheyenne. I logged the experiences to create a sort of simple case study of what using public charging stations for electric vehicles is like here. My goal was to try the charging stations, talk to the people who also use them, and find out what the current, see what I did there, state of EV charging is in this part of the world. My conclusion is that it's still pretty hit and miss. Over the 3 weeks' time, I had 3 separate electric vehicles from 3 different automakers. All of them use the same charging protocol and the same plug. The charging stations at the Cheyenne Target store parking lot also use the same equipment. It's the common plug-in for level 3 and above fast charging for all EVs made to date. This will soon change as most automakers are moving to the Tesla plug-in. Electrify America chargers have a charge rate of up to 350 kilowatts per hour per station. I visited the charging station 7 times over a 3-week period during the daytime, work time hours usually between 11 and 3. Test vehicles included a Mercedes-Benz BMW i4 and a Genesis GV60, all 2024 model year vehicles loaned to me as part of the respective automakers' press fleet programs. It's important to note that each vehicle has a different maximum charge rate and that maximum rates are usually only attained during the first 10 to 30% of the battery's charge. So in other words, the maximum charge rate, that is how quickly it charges, and at the max super fast charging rate, it only happens when the battery is between 10 and 30%. After that, it charges at the normal rate. Quote, I believe it was a combination of low charge output from the charger and the vehicle's fairly conservative approach to charging that led me to experience crappy charging times. The crappy part is my insert into the article. The next week, I used the BMW i4. The first visit was earlier in the day, just an hour before lunch. I plugged it in, spent about 5 minutes attempting to get a connection. The car would connect with the charger and begin taking a charge, and then inexplicably stop the charge and claim a disconnection. The person charging a Volkswagen at the other plug came out of the Target and said they'd had the same issue and were going to just give up on it and try to get to Wellington and charge there. After a few more attempts at getting the BMW to connect, I also gave up. It was clear the EA chargers are having an issue with communication and not the car. I returned a few hours earlier and attempted the same thing. Same result. During that visit, 2 other drivers pulled in to plug in and charge away, and both had the same issue. Clearly, it was Electrify America having problems. Weird that you get the government involved and they screw something up, and it never works quite the same or quite as well as the private sector version. Don't know who saw that one coming. One of the charging stations, the first one I plugged into, was not working, but I hadn't noticed the screen saying out of service until I plugged in. I repositioned to another spot. The plug worked on the first try, and the car began charging. I stayed for about 70 minutes and was at 98% when I left. Now, think about this, my friends. You're traveling across the highways and byways of America on a family vacation, and you run out of gas, or rather, run out of power. And so you find one of these charging stations, and you plug in, and you sit there for 70 minutes and charge the vehicle. Now, I don't know what you're doing for that 70 minutes. Maybe you're shopping. Maybe you're spending money at a junk shop somewhere. But clearly, that's over an hour where you're not continuing on your trip. I don't know about you, my friends, but when I stop for gas, I want it to be in and out, and I want it to be quick and painless, and I don't have to worry about it, which is why I don't own an electric vehicle. I don't see any reason for them. The marketplace hasn't got to a point where they're actually cost effective, or they can get from Cheyenne to Casper in less than 15 hours. That's that article I keep telling you about on the program. It's called EV Road Trip from Hell, Cheyenne to Casper in 15 hours. It was published on the Cowboy, and it may have been written by Aaron Turpin as well. But it's a great expose into the problems with EVs and these charging stations. And the trouble is, my friends, that the government cannot force innovation in a free market. They try each and every time, and the end result ends up being a disaster. Things don't work right. I mean, it's the old joke. If you want to screw something up, get the government involved. And this is clearly the case with these dumb charging stations. Well, despite all of these problems, the feds are still offering billions of dollars more for charging stations. Good news for us, though, my friends. That is, unless you own an electric vehicle, Wyoming isn't interested. Now, there's a great episode I did quite a long time on the podcast. It's called Luke Reiner's Road to Nowhere. And it's all about all this federal money that's being handed out to states to construct these dumb electric charging stations. And so, and I think the new guy at WYDOT, he's probably been in there about a year. So we're talking like 2 years ago when this whole plan started, hand out a boatload of money. And the idea was you're going to build a charging station every 50 miles in Wyoming on interstates. Well, I got news for you. In Wyoming, sometimes there's way more than 50 miles worth of interstate before you run into another gas station. So, I mean, lots of problems. Wyoming is really, really rural, including a lot of the interstates. If you've ever been along I-80, you drive for a long time before you run into a whole bunch more of nothing. And it's the same when you get up to the center of the state. There's a lot of roads where there's nothing for 60, 70, 80 miles. So everybody that lives here or has lived here for any length of time knows that when you see a gas station, you should probably fill up, because you don't know, if you've never been on that road before, you don't know when the next time you're going to run into a gas station is. From the Cowpie, and I quote, "The Wyoming Department of Transportation isn't interested in more federal money to build out $1 million network of electric vehicle charging stations across the Cowboy state. Over the past several months, the state agency has continued to work with a consultant to draft a request for proposals to build out a limited state network of charging stations. That's good for now. WYDOT isn't pursuing more money because the state doesn't have much need for a bigger EV charging network, especially with only 800 registered EVs in Wyoming. Nonetheless, the federal government on Thursday announced plans to offer another $1.3 billion to further expand their EV charging in communities with key roadways. Key roadways being I-90, I-25, I-80. So a lot of this money they're going to attempt to force it down our throats. WYDOT spokesman Spokeswoman Jordan Young said that her agency is aware of the funding offer made by the federal government Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, but doubted that Wyoming would pursue any of the new grant money. Quote, I don't believe that WYDOT will apply for any additional funding, even though the state meets the criteria to apply should it want, Young said. The agency has its hands full with the current RFP, plus the state only has 800 elected or registered EV users. So there's no need for it. It's a waste of money, and they're screwed up even when the government does build them. That seems to be the mantra for everything the Biden administration does. Anytime you hear Joe Biden say, I'm going to build back better, you should just run away and do it yourself if you want it to work in the end. We'll finish up the program after the break.
I'm driving black on black. Just got my license back. I've got this feeling in my face. This train is coming off the track. I'll ask the light if the devil needs a ride, because the angel on my right ain't hanging out with me tonight. I'm driving past your house while you were sneaking out. I got the car door opened up so you can jump in on the run. Your mom don't know that you were missing. She'd be pissed if she could see the parts of you that I've been kissing, screaming, no, we're never gonna quit. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Just acting like we're animals. No matter where we go, 'cause everybody knows we're just a couple animals. So come on, baby, get in. Get in, just get in. Check out the trouble we're in.
You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, entertainment, and commentary than on Cowboy State Politics Live. You know, the program you're listening to right now. And frankly, why would you want to look anywhere else anyway? Let's be honest, only a liberal redcoat commie would do that. And if you want to listen to my podcast, you can find it at cowboystatepolitics.com or anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. If your name is Sleepy Joe Biden and you can't remember if you put socks on this morning or not, well, I can't really help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president of the United States. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone, doing what I was born to do each and every day with talent given to me by God himself. It's absolutely true, my friends. And you should be very thankful of the talents that the good man, the big man upstairs gave you. It's a gift and you ought to use them. And that's what I do each and every day on the program, chasing politicians until they can't stand it anymore and bringing you the facts behind it. A little program update before we continue on with the show. Tomorrow, our pal, Joey Correnti, is going to be in the studio, or at least I'm going to try to convince him to be in the studio during Cowboy State Politics Live, and I'm going to bring that to you on YouTube, on Facebook Live, of course, on the Independence Network. So hopefully tomorrow we've got Joey Correnti with us for the live program. He doesn't get up this way very often. Of course, he lives on the complete other side of the state. So tomorrow he's going to be in town, and we're going to have a lot of content that we can bring you tomorrow. So make sure you stay tuned. And again, I've got word from a couple listeners that everything is functioning at optimum levels, both on YouTube and on Facebook Live and on the Independence Network. So sounds like we're good to go, my friends. You can watch the Ditto Cam every weekday morning from 10 until 11 o'clock, unless I am on the road, on location. Little update for next week. I'm going to be out of the studio Monday and Tuesday. I've got an event down in the, well, I guess you would call it the northwest corner of the state. Apparently there's some Marxists that need my attention, so I'm going to go check them out, and I should have plenty of stuff to talk about when I return. So early on next week, it'll have probably mostly recorded stuff, but I'll be back in the studio next Wednesday. So from Breitbart News, Andrew McCabe, you remember him? Yeah, he was the deputy head of the FBI, and, he decided that he was just going to go full bore after Trump. Well, now he's saying that the DOJ and the FBI folks are worried about being thrown in jail in Trump's second term. Now, we don't really have to read too much of the article just to ask a couple of questions. Now, if you've not done anything wrong, why would you be worried about being thrown in jail? I heard from Hakeem Jeffries last week that the Trump verdict, was an example of how the American justice system is functioning flawlessly. That if you're complaining about the verdict in Trump's trial, well, you are just an enemy to democracy and our flawless justice system. So I have to ask Andrew McCabe, man, if you're not doing anything wrong, why are you worried about going to jail? Oh, that's right. It's going to be Trump's retribution. I get it. And I quote, CNN analyst and former FBI chief Andrew McCabe said Wednesday on CNN's The Source that people in the intelligence and law enforcement community were worried if former President Donald Trump is elected again, they would be thrown in jail or grabbed in some sort of extrajudicial detention. McCabe said, quote, when you think about these things and you try to predict how Donald Trump is going to react, are the steps he's going to take, you really don't have to go any further than listening to the things he says and does. His comments recently are offensive and horrendous, but they're not in a surprising way. He's been saying this for quite some time. I'll be your retribution, is referring to his supporters. So you know him, you know what his motivates him. He is not a person who's driven by principle or ideology, someone who's entirely transactional. Sounds like somebody else I know. Andrew McCabe. What about the old FBI backup plan that the two lovers at the FBI had in place that you were totally behind? All of the dirty things that you did to President Trump, signing FISA warrants with absolutely no proof whatsoever and using proof that you knew had been completely debunked. No, you wouldn't be worried about going to jail over that stuff, would you? No. What? No, why would you worry if that was completely above board? The truth is, my friends, none of that stuff was above board. And there's a very good reason why Andrew McCabe is worried about going to jail. In fact, let's listen to him complain about it.
And, people are really trying to assess, what is life going to be like if Donald Trump wins a second term? And on a very personal level, these are torturous discussions with their family members about whether or not they have to leave the country to avoid being unconstitutionally and illegally detained. People are actually worried about being thrown in jail or grabbed in some sort of extrajudicial detention. And I think, as crazy as this sounds in the United States of America, I think people should really consider that these are possibilities.
As crazy as it sounds, you mean like prosecuting a former president and bringing him up to trial? That sounds pretty crazy, something that might happen in America. Does sound pretty crazy that one of the former top people at the FBI would be engaged in behavior that he might be worried that could possibly land him in jail. Weird, huh? Now, what he's doing is he's trying to set up what may happen later. That all of these folks, Andrew McCabe, James Comey, all of these former intelligence people that lied during the last election, straight up provably lied. Like the Hunter Biden laptop, that's Russian disinformation. No, it wasn't. It was Hunter's laptop, and he has now admitted it. So all of these folks that were engaged in all of this behavior before are now concerned that the commander-in-chief might throw them in the hoosegow. I wonder why. Maybe because they've been breaking the law all along. Well, I have to tell you, Andrew McCabe, you have reason to be worried, my friend, because you are committing some crimes there, buddy. Lying to the FISA court, signing documents that don't really have any proof, seems like offenses that might be prosecutable, but I wouldn't know that. You would, Andrew McCabe, which is why you're saying that in the future, when some of these people are charged for crimes that they chose to commit, that you can now claim, well, see, I said a long time ago, this is crazy stuff. This is crazy talk. Never happened in America. You can see it. You can see the setup coming, my friends, which is what all of these people do. They try to set it up beforehand so that later on, when it actually happens, they can look back and say, yep, saw that one coming. I don't know. Total bogus crap. So we've got about 3 minutes left in the program, and I don't think I've got, well, you know what? I do have time to get to this soundbite, and it's kind of hard, but President Biden was on the tarmac, and he was asked if he's going to hand off power to Kamala Harris and not serve out his full 4 years. Now, the audio is kind of hard to hear because, again, you got the jet in the background, but I think I've monkeyed with the audio, not monkeyed with the audio, but monkeyed with the levels on it enough that you should be able to hear what he said. So let's go ahead and listen to it. And it's going to be difficult. I understand that, but I'll explain after we hear it.
President Biden, will you be serving your full 4-year term or handing over power to Vice President Harris? All 4 years or handing over? You're not hurt, are you? I can't hear you. Could you approach?
Okay, that was really hard to hear. It sounded better coming through my audio speakers. But basically, the reporter asked, "Are you going to do your full 4 years?" And President Biden responded, "Are you okay? Did you fall and hit your head?" A lot of this stuff, the juicy stuff, apparently, he says right next to a roaring jet engine, so it's hard to make out what he's hearing. What am I talking about? It's hard to make out what Joe Biden is saying anytime when he does stuff like this.
True international effort to pressure.
Yeah, tell me about it. But he didn't slur all of his words there. So the Biden, and this is from, let's see here. I think this is from the Daily, no, it's from Conservative Brief. That's where I got this one. Biden jabs reporter who questioned whether he could serve another term or not. President Joe Biden launched some verbal jabs at a reporter following a brief campaign event where he was pandering to black voters in Philadelphia. Now, the question was, President Biden, will you be serving your full 4-year term or handing over power to Vice President Harris? And the president replied, and again, it was really hard to hear on that piece of audio, but the president replied, "Are you okay? Are you all right?" Biden replied. And then he said, "You're not hurt, are you?" I said, "Are you okay? Did you fall on your head or something?" Biden and Harris have launched an outreach program to try and reel in black voters as more of them flock to former President Donald Trump, according to recent polling. Many who are now Trump supporters have complained that their finances are worse under Biden. Yeah, all of ours are too. Don't worry about it. While others are angry that the administration for its lax immigration and border security policies, which have led local Democratic leaders to shift tax dollars away from programs for citizens to support migrants in the country illegally. I saw an article yesterday that hotel prices in New York are skyrocketing because 1 in 4 hotels is occupied by illegal immigrants. Just amazing where our country is at, my friends. And, again, it's the anniversary of D-Day. And so you should just take a little bit of reflection time and think about the type of people we were during the Normandy invasion versus the type of people we are now. It's a very stark difference, and we've got to get back to the former rather than the later. We've burned up another busy broadcast hour on the program. Thanks for watching on Facebook Live, on YouTube, and listening on the Independence Network. And we'll be back at it tomorrow, hopefully, with none other than Joey Carenti. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.